You cannot prove a universal negative. No one can. That's just how it works. I am making the claim that within this black circle, there exists no color green. It's all yellow. And it's up to you to prove that the color green is not in there. Now, of course, this is shifting the burden of proof, and it's asking you to prove a negative. But in this case, it's not a universal negative because there's a limited amount of pixels within the circle that can be examined to see if they're green. And as we zoom in closer and closer and examine all the different pixels, we'll find that there is no green to be found. But that's not really my job to do. You made the claim, you should demonstrate that there is no green there by showing me all the pixels. And if you're unwilling or unable to do that, I get to be skeptical of your conclusion. You'll hear that it's the burden of proof upon the one that makes the claim to present the claim as true. And this is how logic functions. It's just simply how things work. So if I claim that there is the color green within the black circle here, then it is up to me to demonstrate that the color green does in fact appear inside of this circle. And as I zoom in on the image, we will see that there is a green dot. Very small, but it is there. The closer we get, the easier it becomes to see that green dot, and it's simply 1 pixel of green that existed there before, but was just not visible unless you have really, really good eyesight. So zooming in, we can see the green dot. So I have proved my assertion that there was green inside of the black circle. So what does the word universal mean here? Why put that into this phrase that we've heard, you can't prove a negative? Well, technically, we did show that you could prove a negative, at least in this case. But if that circle was the size of the planet Earth, it would be nigh impossible for anyone or even a group of people to find out that it wasn't true. And so you've made it a universal claim by the sheer magnitude of the size of the claim. And universal doesn't mean the entire universe, but it means something that's just out there, bigger than us. So it's somewhat possible to demonstrate within a circle that there is no green, but it's very difficult, if not outright impossible or ridiculous, to prove that the pixel green didn't exist anywhere in the Earth, inside of the Earth. Not on top, mind you, but like somewhere inside of it. And so that's my claim, and you can't prove me wrong. Well, so what? You should prove that you're right, not the other way around. It's much easier for you to demonstrate that something is than for me to demonstrate that something isn't. And you're the one that's making the assertion, so you should provide the evidence. So the question might arise that since you can prove some non-universal negatives, is it okay to demand proof? If the person made the claim that there was no fill in the blank within a non-universal thing that could be demonstrated, then yes, it would be up to them to provide some sort of proof that that was the case. The question is whether or not they've made that claim or not. So is X true? Is X unknown or unknowable? Is X false? Or do you simply have no view or belief regarding X? Now, depending on how you answer that question, depending on what X is, would then change your burden of proof. The difference is, if you say X is true, you do have the burden to show that X is true. Versus saying, I believe X is true, you do not have the burden to show that X is true because it's simply a belief statement. Another quirk of language that you should be aware of is saying that you don't believe X is true does not equal that X is false or that you believe that X is false. You simply don't believe it's true. But that doesn't mean you believe it's false either. It's just you're in doubt. You're in skeptical mode. You haven't made up your mind one way or the other. And people seem to have problems with this depending on what X is. What I've noted as either the mind-reading fallacy or special knowledge is when somebody claims to know what you know, that my doubt of your claim equals that I must believe something else instead. In reality, you have no idea what I do or don't believe about it, but I don't believe your statement as given. So here, the claim is that the car costs $1,000, and I don't believe that. Then there's no way to infer that I therefore believe that the cost is something else. It's just I doubt that it's $1,000. Now, I could be wrong about that, but it's not up to me to show that it isn't $1,000. It's up to you to show that it is $1,000. And that's how the burden of proof works. So, what about that God thing? People claim that there's a God. They have the burden to prove that God is a thing. If they're making the statement that God is real, they must prove that God is real. If they say that they believe in God, they have no burden at all. It's just a belief. They can believe X, Y, Z, whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have any burden. When they say that it is true, that it is real, then they have the burden. And if they say, well, you have to show that God isn't real, they've shifted the burden of proof and also demonstrated a non-understanding of the mechanics of logic. Because it's a universal claim. Well, probably. Depends on what God is that they're claiming about God. If God is in this room right now, oh, really? Well, that at least is localized to this room. Then I could somehow verify God. Well, no, because God's invisible. Oh, well, that's interesting. Well, could I detect it? No, you can't test it in any way, shape, or form. Okay, well, then how do we know that it's there? Well, because you can't show that it isn't there. That's not an answer of how I know it is there. So it's really on you to show that it is there, not on me to show that it isn't. Because that's how it works. And you can't change the mechanics of logic, yet apologists seem to try to do this an awful lot. Probably because there's no proof of God, and that's a problem that they don't know how to solve. Because they don't want to just admit that it's faith. The whole point of apologetics is to give a defense, and faith isn't a very good defense, and they recognize that on some level. It would be extraordinarily honest to say, it's just faith, and that's it, and you just have to have faith. But apologetics isn't about being honest. It's about trying to keep people that do believe in the belief and convince a few people that may not understand mechanics of logic into that belief. The burden of proof is always on the one that makes the claim, whatever the claim is. This doesn't change for anybody ever at any time. And bringing up that, well, but you can't prove it's not true, is completely and utterly irrelevant and demonstrates a fundamental non-understanding of the mechanics of logic, which then make me question the rest of your sensibility when it comes to discussing any particular topic at all. Not to mention a topic that's very important or meant to be seen as very important. So, When you break the basic mechanics of logic by shifting burden of proof or saying, but you can't prove it's not true, giant red flags go up and go, yeah, you don't understand logic, so why am I listening to you again? Why am I reading what you're writing? Yeah, go learn logic, come back and try again. Just don't include that bit there, maybe. Just get rid of that part that says you can't prove it isn't true, because it's completely and utterly irrelevant. So stop doing it.